Thank you. So for those of you who were at the meeting in Bend, fraud and wire fraud was a hot topic, and so I was asked to just touch on it a little bit today. And if you want to talk to me a little bit more, if you want to get somebody from the Ticor team to come in and talk about wire fraud, we have a number of different types of presentations we can do. But we on the escrow side of real estate transaction have the distinct honor of seeing the volume of attempted diversions of funds in real estate transactions. It's gigantic, and it's growing. And if I can just say one thing to the room today, is take it seriously. It's been very prevalent on the residential side. Just to give you an idea, I probably get between 5 and 10 emails a day that are fraudulent emails. They're attempting, they're a phishing process that are trying to suck me into a fraud. Luckily, I and my staff throughout the Willamette Valley have great training to watch out for that. Our company's been extremely proactive, starting with trying to get the word out to our client base as long as 4 years ago when we first started seeing this. But it's just become more and more prevalent. Take it seriously, talk to your clients about it. Though it's been more prevalent on the residential side, the fraudsters are extremely sophisticated, and they've discovered obviously that the payday on the commercial side can be exponentially larger. So they're targeting brokers, they're targeting lenders, they're targeting attorneys, they're targeting your buyers and sellers, they're targeting title and escrow companies. We're paying close attention to it, but it happens every day. And we've been fortunate in the state of Oregon when massive fraud attempts are being talked about all across the country. It's California, it's Florida, it's Texas, it's New York. It's rarely Oregon because we're all honest. But this is one that happens in Montana. It happens in every state in the nation right now. They're very savvy. They look just like the real person that they're purporting to be. They can spoof emails, they can hack emails, and they're being way too successful. So the biggest takeaway, take it seriously. Talk to your escrow officers about it. If you have large staff or want more education on it, Ticor has a number of reps throughout the state that can come in and talk about it and present and show you the real life examples of what to watch out for. There's lots of red flags, and if you're paying attention, you're probably going to ferret it out before it gets too far. So, all right. A little bit about Ticor Title. We cover much of the state of Oregon, much of the nation through our own direct operations and sister companies. We appreciate your business very much. The support that we've gotten from this room throughout the state is fantastic, and we ask you to just keep us in mind in all your commercial needs. So, thank you.
Thank you for the very thorough introduction, David. That was great. So 20 years ago, Lake Oswego city leaders and founders crafted a vision for the downtown Lake Oswego core. And the Wizer block is about 2.5 acres that is right in the middle of that core. It's an integral part of that vision that the founders had many, many years ago. Today, it is a mixed-use development where a cross-section of people can work, play, and shop, but also with our development can live down there in that core. It was a missing puzzle piece for a long time for a destination downtown and a place that before our project was a little bit sleepy, and now we're providing vibrancy there, which we're very excited about. As David mentioned, for the past 20 years, various developers had talked to the landowner about developing the project. And in 2003, a local developer worked on it for a couple of years and ended up walking away. 2006, a national developer engaged with the seller and worked on it for a couple of years, and they also ended up walking away. And the first time that we looked at it was in 2008 when the seller came to me and asked me to look at it and what would my vision be for the property, for the project. In 2009, we received a construction estimate and looked at the feasibility, and then it took us about 3 years to negotiate an agreement with the seller on the property. So it was a long time to negotiate an agreement. And then right after we negotiated that agreement, that was in 2012, that's when we began the initial upfront community engagement. So the first thing we did was we went with our design team, and it used to be a retail shopping mall there, and we took our design team and we camped on top of the building. And the idea of camping on top of the building was so that we could hear the sounds of the area, the light of the area, and the different variances of that part of town. So we can incorporate those type of things into our project. It also was a great way to bond with this team that would be going through this very adventurous entitlement process. And it was a great way to really start that process. So after that, for about a year, we had scores and scores of public outreach and meetings and really community forums. And that led to, in May of 2013, our first hearing with the Lake Oswego Redevelopment Agency. That agency is called LoRa, and they are actually the city council that sits on the Urban Renewal Agency. And that agency's job is to give money for urban renewal projects. So we asked them in May of 2013, would they be interested in providing funding for this project? They approved it 7-0. So that was a really great approval that we had to kick the project off. And then in June of 2013, we took our first design to the neighborhood association. At that neighborhood association meeting, there were over 100 neighbors, and we had substantial support, but there was also a minority of them that was very vocal and that were very negative on the project, and there was robust debate in that first neighborhood meeting. One of the neighbors I had known from business, and he came up to me and he said, are you ready for this type of controversy? And I said, in order to sometimes we have to do tough things to do great things. But at that point, I didn't realize how tough this was going to be. And so the opposition started after that first neighborhood meeting. They started writing citizen view pieces and letters to the editor, negative letters to the editor. And they were saying that I was a hillbilly from the sticks of Scappoose. And what did I know about development, and what did I know about Lake Oswego? And it just became very robust, and I felt like I was running a campaign to become mayor of Lake Oswego. There was a lot of community activity, to say the least. So after that first neighborhood meeting, we decided to step back and set up an ad hoc design committee. And on that committee, we put the neighborhood chair of the neighborhood that we were in. We put the chair of the neighborhood across the street from us. There were 2 city planners on that committee. There was the LoRa director. Then the city also hired an independent architect to be on that committee. And we had 3 meetings, and we went through the neighborhood feedback and also the feedback of these community leaders. And we changed the project around and did a second design and took that back to LoRa. And LoRa had design approval rights, so we took it back to LoRa. At that hearing with LoRa, that was August of 2013, and there were over 24 people that testified at that hearing, and LoRa made comments to us. And again, that was the city council wearing their urban development hat. And they made comments to us at that meeting, and they also approved it 7-0. They approved that second design unanimously. At that point, the opposition was really not happy with that vote from LoRa, and they decided to really turn up the heat. And they hired 2 attorneys to help defeat the project. And in February of 2014, we took that second design to the Design Review Commission. That was the entitlement body in Lake Oswego. And at that first hearing, it was standing room only. Now, up until that hearing, we had citizen view pieces again, flyers that were sent out to the community, postcards. There were yard signs that say stop high density development in Lake Oswego, and I'll show you one of these. These were the yard signs that were all over Lake Oswego saying stop the Wizer block development. So it was definitely like I said before, a campaign. And so that first DRC hearing, it was a night, there was 3 hearings that were late night hearings for the Development Review Commission, which I'll call DRC. The first, those meetings, it was standing room only, people wearing buttons that said stop the Wizer block, t-shirts, and over 80 people testified. About 40 people actually testified for the project, and 40 people testified against the project. And it was really apparent that the opposition was getting to the 7 Design Review Commission people. And so we decided not to have them vote that night. We decided to let us go back to the drawing board, make some changes, and we'll come back to you. That was a really tough decision for me to make, because at that point we had already invested over $1 million in a design that was well within the code. And if we were to go back and significantly redesign that, that would be another $1 million of investment. I mean, this was money that I didn't know if we were going to be able to get it approved, even if it was objectively to the code. It was a very difficult decision, but this project required that level of commitment, and so that's what we did. After those first DRC meetings, one of the leaders of the opposition met with one of the leaders of our proponents, and he met with them, and he was bragging because the DRC really wasn't going to vote for the project at that time. And he said, I've been responsible for stopping 42 projects in Lake Oswego. And he said, this is going to be 43. And I heard that from our proponent, and that was really frustrating. But even more frustrating was that this particular person was part of our design ad hoc committee, and he was in 3 of those committee meetings, and he was supportive. He had comments, and we responded to him, and he was supportive. And so later he became known as the Trojan Horse. So 6 months later, after that first DRC hearing, we significantly redesigned the project and took it back to the Development Review Commission in July of 2014. And we took it back, and we had the first hearing that we had with them, or the first 3 hearings, the comments. We objectively took 14 comments, and we said, these were your comments, and this is how we addressed every single comment. Very objective. But it was still just too much for them to vote for it because of the really vocal opposition. So we were defeated 3-2 by the Design Review Commission. And it was just a subjective interpretation of the code, if there was even a code at that time. It was very subjective. So I remember going back that night. It was 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was on my elliptical machine in the gym thinking, okay, well, what are we going to do now? We have designed this project underneath the height, within the density, per the 3 Lake Oswego styles. We have less variances than a single-family home being built in that area. It's per the code, and this is also the vision of the city of Lake Oswego. And I said, we can't go back now. There's only one decision, and that's to appeal their decision to the city council. At the first city council meeting, as you could probably imagine by now, it was standing room only. And my wife actually went to that one. That's the only one she went to of all the hearings we had. And she had to stand in the hallway and watch it on TV because there were so many people there. And she said that when she was standing in the hallway, she was standing next to some of the opponents, and they were absolutely steaming and rude, and they were booing when the proponents testified in favor of the project. They were booing them. It was pretty pretty crazy. And then when I was there, I was sitting in the front. I remember it feeling like a state basketball game that I'd been in high school, when the fans were spitting and yelling at me and calling me names. That was the type of environment that we were in. And so September 2014, the City Council, after 3 more nights of long hearings, the City Council ended up voting in a decisive 5-2 vote in favor of the project. So they overturned the DRC's hearing and they voted in favor of the project. The opposition was absolutely furious, and they were so mad that they ended up financing and campaigning their own candidate for city council. So the city council election, there were 3 seats coming available in November. That was in September. 3 seats coming available in November, and so they had their own candidate, and they campaigned really against the Wizer block. And there was one incumbent city councilor that was running again, and he had seconded the motion to vote for the project. And then there was a new candidate that was trying to get on the city council, that his platform was the project, in favor of the project. Well, ultimately, they failed to elect their candidate. They failed to unseat the incumbent, and they also failed to stop the new candidate that was in favor of the project from being elected. So at that point, the community had made it clear that they were in favor of the project. So you might think that it was time to break ground. We're through the city council, but not so fast. The opposition, consisting of very few vocal neighbors and 2 attorneys and then a competitive developer, decided to appeal that city council decision to the Land Use Board of Appeals, which is otherwise known as LUBA. In April 2015, at the LUBA hearing, after the hearing, they gave a strongly worded opinion in favor of the project and affirming the city council's decision. But one member of the community, that still wasn't enough. The competitive developer dropped out at that point, but one member of the community put up all the money to appeal it to the Oregon Court of Appeals. In August of 2015, the Oregon Court of Appeals dismissed the opposition's case without writing an opinion, and that was the best possible outcome for us. They decided that there is 0 merit to this appeal. And so after 15 hearings on the development, 15 public hearings, the Court of Appeals decision on a project that was under the height limit, within the density, per the styles of Lake Oswego, the opposition, consisting of fewer and fewer neighbors, still wanted one more shot and appealed us to the Oregon Supreme Court. Well, at that point, the construction costs were still increasing, and this was a delay tactic so that we would not have a project that was feasible. So we had to make the decision: either we start construction now, or we wait and the project will probably it won't be feasible. And so we decided we're going to start the construction with this appeal that's out there at the Oregon Supreme Court. The good news was that in November of 2015, we heard back from the Oregon Supreme Court that they were not going to hear the case and that we were successful. So it took about a little over 2 years, and in April of this year, we opened up the project, and it went from the Wizer block to the Windward. And in conclusion, I'm really proud of the Windward. Even with the obstacles that we had to face, I'm very excited about the place that it'll have in Lake Oswego's future. The Windward is revitalizing a significant block and meeting the goal of a more vibrant and energetic downtown. Working with the community and the city, we have complemented the surroundings of that area and built both an economically and environmentally sustainable development. We have delivered a high-quality project both in design and in construction that will stand the test of time down there in the core. Someone once said to me, "You can't steal second base, with still having 1 foot on first base. Well, collectively, the community and Lake Oswego are now standing on second base. The vibe of the windward, like David said, is very apparent when you're down there. We look forward to the exciting possibilities that this can offer Lake Oswego, and we know that the windward will be another Oswego landmark that the city can be proud of. Thank you.
Questions?
I don't think I need a microphone. So how much do you think on a percentage basis, you don't gotta give me a number, did it add to the cost of the development, and is it really worth it for us developers to put up that much time and effort when there's a roll of the dice like you were talking about? I mean, I would have been scared to death that at any point you were gonna end up getting that no, and that would have been absolutely devastating.
Yes, they delayed the project over a couple of years. They probably delayed it a couple of years. And we know the construction market and the escalation in prices. I'm not sure how much, what percentage, but I'd say at least 10% in construction costs. I mean, they're going up, about 1% every 2 months right now. So, but yes, it was definitely and it's a delay tactic, I think, for a lot of the neighbors. They know that construction costs will go up, and if we delay it long enough, they won't be able to go forward.
Similar to that question is how much knowing, I mean, it seems like from the beginning you knew it was going to be a risky project. Did you build a bigger contingency into your pro forma from the beginning knowing that, or did you go in just like any other development project?
We knew that it was a very engaged community going into it, and even the project across the street from us, Lakeview Village, had trouble getting approval. That was more of a public project because the public owned the property, and it was really more of a public project even than ours because the city owned that property. So I knew that there would be some debate about it, and anti-growth and some anti-density. But what I didn't know is that, so going into it, we had contingencies for the general public. I didn't know that the developer across the street would fight us. And I think that really added a lot of pressure to the project because a developer knows how to fight another developer, right? So that's what really turned it to what I wasn't expecting, and I didn't expect that to happen.
Let's use the mic, guys, so we can get on the video too. Okay, I heard that you were 6'5" in 2013. Did that have anything to do with this project? Your current stature?
I'm 6'1" right now, and I think it was definitely a very wearing experience, but I think I've learned a lot from the process as well. I'm not sure. I think it depends on the particular site and the particular property.
So, hi there. So, on behalf of my wife, thank you for bringing Salt and Straw to Lake Oswego. How do you approach new sites with design review? Are you engaging in those sites, or are you staying away from municipalities or parcels with that overlay on them? Or how are you treating that?
Well, one of our goals in our company is legacy. I mean, that's one of our core values in the company. And part of legacy is developing projects that 20 or 30 years from now, we can look back and say that we've really helped the skyline of Portland. We've really helped the Portland metropolitan area. So part of that legacy, part of that value is actually engaging with the community. And on all of our projects, we can just do the one checkbox, go to the neighborhood community, one meeting checkbox, and then submit your design. But we've always taken the approach of going and going out to the neighbors in advance and meeting with neighbors before the neighborhood meetings and really having community outreach and public process. We do that anyway because we know that even though we'll open ourselves up to some anti-growth, anti-development people, we can get some really good ideas from people who live in that community. And so that's just part of the process that we do. Now, your question about the government officials, say city council, if the city council is growth or anti-business, that definitely plays into what we're going to do. And I think it's really important. The elected officials are really important. And the problem with the type of projects we do is sometimes they take a long time and those elected officials can turn over. But it's really important to look at the current state of the city council and what their feelings are prior to engaging in a community.
So related to that, strategically with the community, you really didn't gain a lot of ground by sort of, sort of kowtowing to what some of the neighbors wanted. You may have been better off just going straight to the appeal process. Was this kind of one of the lessons learned, do you think, in this, in that, obviously you want to reach out to the neighbors and get their input and go through the process, the public process, but it seemed like you may have saved yourself some time by just orchestrating this to the point where you go quicker to the appeal process.
And that's a great question because it's risk versus reward. And we could have, after that first DRC meeting, we could have said, okay, vote on it, and we're just going to go to city council. One of the lessons learned was this was not about PR, this was about politics. And we had PR going into it, and then I pivoted to more of a political campaign than a PR campaign. And it was extremely important on the city council level that they saw that we were making changes. They saw that we had heard the DRC, and so that gave them political cover, even though they had voted 7-0 twice on the lower level to put money into the project, not just to approve, but to put money into to invest in the project. But we still lost 2 of those votes because of the political environment. So, but we pivoted, and I think that who knows what would happen if we said we're going to save the 5% in construction escalation and go straight to city council. The risk is the city council says no. And then you're really caught off. You just have to try to turn that around, and it's very, very tough. So we decided to, let's significantly redesign it. We'll objectively listen to the DRC. We'll objectively answer them. And then it puts the city council in a decision that are they going to uphold their code? And so it gave them some political cover as well. And so that's why we made that decision.
Any other questions? Answered them all, Patrick, I guess. So what are you working on now?
We're working on a condominium development on the corner of Northeast 21st and Multnomah. It's called 2020. And it'll be finished in the summer of 2019. And they're for sale condominiums, concrete and steel construction, mid-rise, and great views of downtown Portland.
Actually working with people that want to get something done?
We're under construction right now. The construction's going really well. The entitlement period is a little different story sometimes.
I understand. I have my brother-in-law did a project in Roatan, and I laughed because I was down there looking at the project one day, and I said, so what's labor cost around here? He said, oh, the daily wage. I said, what's that? He says, $10. I said, well, yeah, you get about $10 worth of work done out of these guys, too, because it wasn't pretty. But anyway, thank you very much, Patrick.
You're welcome.